Hello and welcome to GC Live Fowl Balls. As always, I'm Intern Joe. Joined with me is my co-host, Mr. Jack Veltri. Jack, how are we doing this fine Wednesday evening?
Doing good, man. Doing good, man. Seems like you're home, right?
I am back home in Indiana. Fun stuff. It's good to see the fam and whatnot. It's been played a lot of golf last couple of
Oh,
days.
that's awesome.
So good stuff. Made the drive last Saturday, so it's good. Drive went well and whatnot, so it's good to be home for a little bit. How about you? Everything good?
Yeah, man. Just been working a lot and hanging out. My brother's home for the month from football, so it's nice to catch up with the whole family now. And so doing well, man. Can't really complain at all. Wish Colin was with us, but
Yeah,
it's like who knows at this point. Maybe someday he'll rejoin.
it is what it is. I mean, he'll be back eventually. There was unfortunately a welcome home tour stop tonight, so Colin Taylor will not be with us, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll get him back for the Hoover show.
You gotta hope so.
I would assume he'll be back. He'll make his return before the SEC tournament. So absolutely. So before we get into it, I do want to talk about one of our title sponsors. His information is above us. That is Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. You can find him at clinthammond.com. Also call him at 803-771-6933. If you're in need of help with your mortgage, call our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with five-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback and my post-game co-host Perry Orth with their mortgages. Give our guy Clint a call. Once again, 803-771-6933. You can call him for all of your mortgage needs. So, Jack, getting into it, big series coming up this weekend at Founders Park with Tennessee. Give me your initial thoughts of the Vols heading into Founders Park this weekend.
I thought the Vols were I think everyone that follows college baseball remembers how good this team was last year. And South Carolina got a good dose of what Tennessee could really do. I think they got swept pretty badly last year in Knoxville. But to start the year, Tennessee was kind of struggling. They had lost some games that they probably shouldn't have. But they've kind of picked it up since. Now they're back to being ranked. I think they were ranked as high as maybe like 2 to start the season. Then they went unranked for a good bit, but now they're ranked in the top 20 again. And they're trending upwards. They swept Vanderbilt a few weeks ago. They lost a series to Georgia recently. But I think they also just beat Kentucky 2 out of 3. So they're trending in the right direction. It's going to be interesting to see what happens because Tennessee's not really the best road team. I think they're only 2-11 on the road this year, which isn't very good. And South Carolina's pretty good at home, even though we'll get into them, but they haven't been playing very good. So it's going to be a nice matchup to close out the year. Normally this matchup's a little earlier in the season, but it's a good test for both teams to see where they're really at. Right before Hoover and then the regionals and all that, which both of them should be in. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think Tennessee's a really, really, really good team that's kind of turned it on as of late. They had really, really, really high expectations coming into the season, and then just haven't delivered on them quite yet. Still ranked pretty high. The RPI has them up to I think 23, so they're slowly clawing back. This team is, so I think they're dangerous right now just because of how the last couple series have gone and whatnot. Anything can happen in the SEC. I think it'll be good for South Carolina to get some home cooking. It's really what you've needed, and unfortunately they dropped the midweek game, which we'll get into it, Jack. Kind of what they need to do to host a first round tournament game. I don't know if it's necessarily out of the question yet. I know losing the midweek didn't help, but coming up against Tennessee, you need something here.
So something's got to change. It's just, I think, we all knew at some point South Carolina was due for a bump in what was up to 3 weeks ago a pretty flawless season with just a few random losses in there. I mean, South Carolina looked literally unbeatable. I think everyone now is kind of maybe retracting their statements about purchasing tickets for Omaha and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. Don't give up yet. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of time left in this season. Anything can happen. Just because they're slumping right now doesn't mean they could turn around in a few weeks or even next week, honestly, with Hoover. But yeah, getting back to your question, I just think they really just. I think they got to win the series. You have to win the series in order to get to where you want to go, and it would be a real confidence boost if they could win at least 2 of these games coming up this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to take 2. Yeah, at least take the series. I think that's the biggest thing. South Carolina getting a lot of guys back recently. Obviously, there were a couple guys back this past weekend. Going through the injury report real quick. Braylon Wimmer obviously back. Talmadge Leakroy back and active. Will McGillis is back fully active, but Coach Kingston said he needed some rest. Rightfully so. I mean, coming back off an injury like that, you're not going to be 100% right away. Eli Jersenbeck is done for the year. Noah Hall, still no realistic return date or any rumblings, really. And then Will Tippett and Chris Veach are both back, fine and playing. Jack, what are you seeing from I guess the injury report, and how are these guys going to be able to help this weekend?
Yeah, I think just starting off with the pitching at this point, I mean, I haven't heard anything, but I'm just expecting at this point the mindset of no Noah Hall probably at least maybe through the regionals, maybe honestly the rest of the way. Who knows? I mean, I don't know if Kingston's ever really going to admit it until it's like officially like known, but yeah, I mean, he's probably the biggest loss right now, especially for this pitching. And I think South Carolina's doing what they can. Justin Parker doing an all right job. But it's a tough challenge when you lose your pretty much ace at this point, and then Will Sanders won't be pitching this weekend. But the hope is that he'll be back. Either I think ideally you'd want him back next week, but at the very least you'd get him back for regionals. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process on the pitching. Oh, and also Jersenbeck. That's really a tough loss out of the bullpen, just because he's a young freshman, a lot of upside to him, and it just stinks to lose a guy like that to an injury. And then hitting wise, I mean, you're getting the guys that you've been missing for the past few weeks finally back, and this is the South Carolina that should be pretty much the same all the way through the rest of the season, barring any more injuries. You're getting Braylon Wimmer back. You're getting Will McGillis back, Talmadge Leakroy back. You have the whole band back together now. It's just a matter of getting that timing back to what it used to be and getting back up to game speed. I think right now the standouts have been Leakroy and Wimmer. And I think McGillis slowly but surely will kind of get back to that same pace. I mean, after all, yesterday was his first game, or whatever day it was, the midweek game. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. But anyway, once you get him back up to 100% speed, I think everything will be fine. I'm telling you, I think just by the time this team gets to Hoover next week, I don't know when South Carolina would start playing games, but you have to think it's a little later, maybe in the week, depending on seeding. But I think South Carolina will come ready to play when it really matters most, which is the regionals and Hoover, and then if they make it that far, even supers too. So things are definitely trending upwards with injuries right now. I know it's looked pretty bleak for the past few weeks, but it's a good sign that you're starting to get a lot of guys back, and even though you're missing a few right now on the pitching side.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies for my dog, by the way. Must be hungry or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, absolutely what Todd's saying. They are on one of the worst skids. I haven't done the numbers. I'm sure Colin's got them.
I got them right here. So they have lost 7 of their last 8, and then I think think I saw they've lost maybe 9 of their last 12. It's something along those lines. But overall, it's just been pretty awful right now. Honestly, you lose, you almost get swept by Auburn, then you go to Kentucky, you get the breaks beat off of you, and then you go to Arkansas, you win the second game of the series, have a chance to win the rubber match, but you really just can't do it. And hats off to Arkansas. I think they pitched a lot better than South Carolina this weekend, even though Carolina didn't pitch bad. It's just they kept South Carolina neutralized at the plate, and I mean we'll get into the numbers, but they really just couldn't do much at all this weekend.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, we're not going to spend too much time dwelling on the Arkansas series just because of how bad it was. And there really isn't a whole lot there. I mean, it was kind of just more of the same for South Carolina. Wouldn't you agree, Jack?
yeah, definitely. It's just I thought the offense. I'll just get into the offense now. It was just the offense really just wasn't good at all this weekend. I mean, they went 17 for 94, which translates to just about a 180 batting average. And they only scored 5 runs this weekend. So, I mean, they had 2 games in which they had 1 run, and then they obviously won the middle game by a few runs. But most of that was due to awesome pitching from Jack Mahoney, who threw 7 shutout innings, best start of the year by far on Saturday. But you really need to see this offense kind of have an uptick, and they play a lot better against Charlotte the other day. They scored 9 runs, but normally 9 runs wins you a game, but it didn't for South Carolina with the bullpen not being up to par. But I think you just need both the pitching and offense in sync in order to win overall. So, I mean, we'll see what happens this weekend. I do think we're due. They're due for better play at some point. I mean, there's no way they. I mean, they played so good all year long, and then the rest of the year they're just not going to show up. Like, I find that very hard to believe. This team is very resilient. I would say that they're not giving up, and I don't think anyone else, fans, whomever, I don't think they should give up on this team either.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, obviously the winning is in the DNA of this team. I mean, best start in program history. Todd, appreciate the comments, the donation, as always. Appreciate you watching. But yeah, I mean, I think this team has to right the ship eventually, right? Like it has to come around because again, is in the DNA of this team. We saw that with the best start in history. They're on a run. They were hitting home runs. The offense was all there. Everything was clicking at one point. So you just got to tap into that. And as good as they were, even if you tap into a percentage of that, you find maybe 25% or even 50% of what you were during that run. It's still a really good ball club and can compete in the SEC. You need to do something to stop the skid. Absolutely do something there. Jack, looking again at Tennessee, looking ahead, I guess, weekend rotation, South Carolina will throw Eli Jones on Thursday. He's 4-3 with a 3.40 ERA, 41.2 innings pitched, 12 walks and 52 Ks. Going up against the Gamecocks for Tennessee will be Andrew Lindsay, right-hander. He's 1-2 with a 2.98 ERA, 48 innings pitched, 16 walks and 49 Ks for Thursday. Jack, what are you seeing out of that matchup for Thursday?
Yeah, I think Eli Jones is kind of. I mean, we saw it a few weeks ago. He pitched against Mississippi State. He got a start in the SEC. Did all right. Nothing crazy. But this past weekend against Arkansas, he really showed that he kind of belongs at some point in the future. I think, honestly, next year he will be competing for one of those top spots in the rotation, depending on who stays and who leaves. But, I mean, he had the most strikeouts he's ever had before. He reached double digits. I mean, he's just pitching really good for this team right now, especially with everything that's been going on with Will Sanders and Noah Hall. But yeah, and then Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's pitching is normally pretty good. I mean, I expect South Carolina is going to have they're going to have to work through this pitching staff really well. They're going to have to, take good pitches and work the count and get on base and move guys over. All that stuff that you need to do to win games. is something that they're really going to have to harp on this weekend. But I don't think it'll be easy by any means. They will. I think South Carolina will drop at least one game in this series. Don't know when. Don't know who it'll be against, but I mean, it could be against Chase Dollander or the Thursday night guys. So it's just you really never know. But I do expect Thursday, with South Carolina only naming one starter right now, Eli Jones will give them a good outing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about Chase Dollander for Tennessee. He will get the start on Friday. South Carolina is TBA. Dollander 6-5, 4.35 ERA, 61 and a third innings pitched, 25 walks, 94 Ks is the number to watch there. It's pretty good, top 5 in the SEC. And then Saturday, both teams are starting or have TBA for the starter. So, I mean, we'll get into our speculations as to who South Carolina will throw and quite possibly who Tennessee will throw. Tennessee's bullpen, though, Jack, on the other hand, also very, very deep. They've got 4 guys with 20-plus appearances with a combined ERA of 3.195 with 121 Ks between the 4 of them. That's elite. And then, I mean, talk about depth. Including those 4 guys, they have with 10-plus games or appearances, their ERA is a 3.43. Just kind of crunching some numbers earlier. Their bullpen is really, really deep and really, 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 really good. It's going to be interesting to see how South Carolina's lineup will go against the starters, and also to how deep they can get into this bullpen. Because if you make them work, there are runs to be had there, but it will be interesting. Talking a little bit about just guys to watch. Tennessee's batting, like if we're talking in terms of South Carolina's pitching, Tennessee's bats are loaded. I mean, they only have 2 starters that are hitting under 300, and it's not by much. Their 8-hole hitter, Hunter Ensley, is hitting 292, and then 44 Zane Denton hitting 289. That's pretty good when you have 2 out of the 9 aren't hitting over 300. It's pretty solid.
It's not even that low, which is even crazier. Honestly, anything above like 280 is pretty good normally. But yeah, Tennessee, man, they can mash. So I'm just curious to see if South Carolina's offense will wake up this weekend and kind of match whatever Tennessee's going to bring to the table. Because at this point you have to. I mean, Tennessee will score runs this weekend. I just think it's kind of on South Carolina to go back at it and keep scoring runs to match them, and at some point score more than them. But yeah, like you said, I mean, they got Jared Dickey, Christian Moore. They definitely lost some guys from last year, but this team is still really good. Even though they might not be as good as last year, don't underestimate them. I mean, they could easily come into Columbia and sweep the Gamecocks this weekend with the way South Carolina's been playing. But I do think we're in for a treat of a matchup this weekend, top 25 matchup in the SEC to close out the year. I don't really think there's anything better than that. So
no, absolutely not. And Senior Day, obviously, something to bring up too. I forgot to bring it up earlier, but Senior Day for Noah Hall, James Hicks, Will McGillis, Nick Proctor, Wesley Sweat, Brett Thomas, and Braylon Wimmer on Saturday. So if you are going to the game on Saturday, make sure you get there early and support the seniors that are getting honored before the game. Yeah, Jack, you brought him up quickly. The hitters to watch for Tennessee, Jared Dickey. He's hitting 352, 422 on base percentage, 592 slugging with 12 bombs. It's pretty darn good. And then Maui Ohuna, I believe I'm saying that right. He's hitting 320 with 439 OBP and 575 slugging with 7 homers. That's pretty much the heart of the lineup for them. Really, really, really want to, not necessarily pitch around them, but you can't hang anything to these guys. They are the cream of the crop when it comes to the SEC. And again, obviously the season isn't going quite as you liked. And like you said, Jack, they're not as good as they were last year, but these guys are still a really, really, really good baseball team. They're going to give South Carolina a really big test, especially if the pitching isn't, on par or if it has been, or if it is going to be anything like we've seen recently.
Yeah, nail on the head, Joe. I just think, I mean, I keep saying it. South Carolina they really do need to bring their A game this weekend. I don't know what's going on these past few weeks. They just look like a completely different team. I mean, 3 weeks ago they were sweeping Florida. Looked like they were unbeatable. I mean, we were talking about them being arguably the number one team in the country,
Hmm.
and now they're number 13 in the country. They took a pretty big drop this past week, going from 6 to 13.
Yep.
So yeah, they really need to bounce back this week, and not just for a national seed and hosting a regional and all that stuff, but just for morale's sake. I think this would really do a lot for them moving forward, just to get the confidence back up and stuff, and just feeling like they're back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there was one game at Arkansas where you felt like yourselves again. And I think in this midweek game that they kind of did too. It just wasn't there together, for the pitching side of things, but the bats were there. And I mean, they're getting there. It's the little things, but again, it just has to be better. Jack, you want to talk about our other presenting sponsor, Liberty Tax?
Let's do it. All right. So, Taxity is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. But on the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. They're locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, open 9 to 9 weekdays and 9 to 5 Saturdays. There are multiple service options. Start through Liberty Tax mobile app or through desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. You can give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. And we have the number on screen there, 803-462-5576. Again, Liberty Tax's phone number is 803-462-5576. And they'll be able to help with all your tax needs.
Absolutely. Give them a call for tax needs. And also, too, want to give a shout out to Garnet Trust below us. Garnet Trust is the best a lot of South Carolina athletes work with. Garnet and Trust, shout out to them. Give them a shout if you were looking to support South Carolina athletes on the NIL front. All right, Jack. Now is the time where we kind of look ahead, play some hypothetical games here. So my first question for you is, obviously South Carolina lost in midweek. Is there anything you can take from that?
Yeah, I think you could take a lot from it. I think the offense showed that they're not dead. I think that's for one, after scoring 5 runs against a really good Arkansas team. Granted, it's Charlotte, but Charlotte's kind of had their number this year, so it's pretty good to get 9 runs. And normally 9 runs wins you a game. You should not have to lose a game when your offense is playing that good. But again, it comes down to the pitching. I mean, it just really wasn't a good outing this weekend from your pitching. I mean, you get Kate Austin throwing 3 innings, and he did fine. You gave up 2 runs, and then just after that, it just looked really rough. The one standout from the bullpen, I would say, was Nick Proctor, who pitched really well. But then Mark Kingston pulled him after 14 pitches, and you bring on Chris Veach, and Chris Veach has been dominant this year. He's been really solid, but just really struggled yesterday. He just pitched 1/3 of an inning, gave up 3 hits, 4 runs, and walked a guy. And it's a snowball effect of just not pitching good. And that it was the difference in the game yesterday. Because South Carolina had all the momentum going early. They scored all these runs, and then they were down by a few, and then they come back and fight their way, tie the game. And it seemed like, okay, this team's due to get this win with all the momentum on their side, and then they give it up right away. So I don't think it was the wrong move. I mean, there's a few ways to look at it. I mean, it's Chris Veach. He's been really good this year. You want outs from him. You're trusting him to get these outs. However, I just think with the way Proctor was pitching yesterday, I mean, he was throwing really good. Only had 14 pitches too, which maybe it was a matchup sort of thing. Maybe the staff saw something that would work better. But at the same time, I think you rolled what you got with the guys that are pitching well. But that's just my 2 cents on it. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong. Maybe there's something we're missing on that. But
yeah,
yeah, I think what you can take away from it is just I think just the offense needed a game like that to get going, and I think it'll hopefully carry into the weekend. But another takeaway is just the bullpen just really didn't look good. Again, you're throwing guys in there that maybe you won't always be throwing. It's not your normal bunch, and again, you're not normally getting 3 innings as a starter from Kate Austin. You're normally throwing your Will Sanders, Jack Mahoney's, Matthew Becker's of the world. Um, so yeah, I just think the guys that will be coming out of the bullpen this weekend, I think are your normal guys that typically do pretty well. And even Veach, I know he had a rough outing, but I mean, again,
it's
it's been
baseball.
it's baseball. He can't have that under 2, under 1 ERA all the time. He's gonna have some rough moments just like everybody. Um, but yeah, I think those are just kind of my main takeaways. Nothing to overly fret about. Um, but again, it's just like the midweek struggles of last year. Kind of, it's like deja vu, just kind of returning these past few
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of last year, kind of returning those last couple weeks. Your ace is hurt, losing guys left and right feels a lot like last season. But last season you also didn't have the greatest start in program history. So two different ways you can go there. My takeaways from the midweek, just kind of again, like I said earlier, just the offenses. It's not necessarily back all the way, but you had a lot more offensive production, not as low scoring. You lost 11-7, I think the final was. Um,
I think it was 11-9.
11-9, yeah, and 9 runs. I mean,
It should win you a game.
yeah, should win you a game normally. But again, like you said, Veach, it is baseball at the end of the day. So the offense it's there. Gavin Casas, I mean, welcome back last weekend. He was back. It was good to see Moose's bat alive. So all of your usual suspects are back and doing what they can do. They just got to put it all together and also have the bullpen kind of close things down. So that's kind of my takeaway again. It's good to see the usual suspects hitting home runs again. Will Tippett out of nowhere. Deciding he's like, okay, I'm a power hitter now, I
He's
guess.
Barry Bonds now.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
where that came from, but good for Tip. Jack, any lineup changes?
Um, I think, like I said, a reference to before, I think just right now, with what you've got Braylon Wimmer, Tippett. When I honestly, I mean, yeah, Tippett should probably be in there. You got Lee Croy. I mean, pretty much your normal starters that have been back now every day with the guys that are returning: Lee Croy, Wimmer, and McGillis. As long as McGillis is healthy, he should be in there. I'd leave Braswell in there if you can fit him in, and then just, I mean, rock like normal right now. You got everything back to where it should have been all year if it weren't for injuries. But I think right now this offense will be continuing to go uphill and picking it up as the season kind of wears on. So I feel pretty good about this group that they've got right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. No real changes for me either. Obviously, you want to see McGillis back in. Tippett, depending on who bats better, I think Tippett right now, you put him in center, but Stoney, not a bad look. It comes back and brings up the conversation of who do you throw back in center field. We've been through that. Just, kind of depends on who the better bat is at the moment. Stoney had been hitting a little bit too, but for me, it's just you want to see those guys that, I mean, if you can play in the series, play. You're playing because you kind of need it, and then you also need a good showing in Hoover too. But no real lineup changes for me. Jack, who I mean, South Carolina or Tennessee, who do you think is gonna raise some eyebrows this weekend?
Man, one guy I just have. I mean, I know it's not really like an eyebrow raiser, but one guy I feel like that really just needs that big weekend to kind of get himself back in the thick of it, I think would be Ethan Petrie. Obviously,
Mhm.
he's been for pretty much all year. He's been South Carolina's saving grace in this lineup. I don't think without him, I think this team would be way worse than they have been playing. I think think about it. He's hit 21 homers this year. I mean, how many of those games does South Carolina win if he doesn't show up and have the heroics that he's had all year? So he hasn't been hitting the ball like crazy. He had 2 hits yesterday, but you really want him to kind of get back to that 400 kind of hitter that he's kind of been. His average has dipped to 378, which is still really good, honestly. But I think that's the one guy that needs to get it back to where he's been in order for this lineup to kind of take off, like we've seen before.
Yeah, I like that take. I think Petri's one of them. I'd like to see Gamecocks consistently hit throughout a weekend. I think it's something we've seen in spots, but we've seen him, have one breakout game and that was it. I think you're going to need a little bit more from him this weekend. Petri, you stole mine, Jack. We should have put it in the notes, but I mean, Petri's got to be one. You want to see Eli Jones go out and dominate. Becker's available, right? But not.
So yeah, Becker. Yeah, we can get into the rotation real quick. Just the thing that kind of surprised me was, I felt like this probably was coming. It's not really that much of a surprise, but Becker wasn't named in the rotation this weekend, and neither was Mahoney, which is, I guess, maybe Kingston's just trying to, outsmart Tennessee or something. I don't know. But you leave those 2 spots as TBA. I feel like after the start you got last week, Mahoney has to be pitching. He's got to be starting on Friday. There's no way he's not starting this weekend. And then Becker, I mean, Joe, unless I'm missing someone, who else are you going to throw as a starter this weekend? You don't have Jerzenbeck. I'm trying to think of some other guys that could potentially start. You might be a little limited on Cade these first few games with him throwing 3 innings yesterday. But right now, I feel like Becker's got to be your Saturday starter. Even though he hasn't been amazing this year, I think compared to last year, he was a lot better. But it's not like hasn't been bad. He's giving you enough of a chance to win the games normally, and I think he's better as the game goes on too. So I feel like maybe it's just a ploy to kind of like mess with Tennessee a little bit. But I think those would kind of be the guys to get in there.
Yeah, I agree. The rotation, I mean, I kind of like the TBA, maybe to mess with Tennessee a little bit. And then, so yeah, I would assume Mahoney's gonna be one of the.
Got it. He threw 7 shutout innings last week, and keep in mind he was supposed to be like a bullpen guy, I think, in the Arkansas series. But again, South Carolina didn't name him a starter, but they ended up going with him.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's where my head was at. I was like, I didn't necessarily know why.
Yeah, he's fine.
Maybe he is the guy, like within the clubhouse or something, and they just haven't named him yet. But that was a big surprise to me. Eli Jones, not so much. Becker, not so much. But not having Mahoney named publicly, I don't necessarily know what's going on with that. But realistically, I think you see Eli Jones, Matthew Becker, and Mahoney. Whether Mahoney's in Saturday or Sunday, I'm not sure yet, because depending on, I guess, what happens on Friday, you kind of have to wait and see. That's also probably why they did a TBA, because if you're going to need, say you win game 1, I'd rather have Mahoney go on Saturday and try to get you that win, take the series before it's over, on Friday. So that's kind of where I would have the rotation. Jack, just in general, what do they got to do to get things back on track?
You just need to continue hitting, for one, just like you have recently. You need to just continue to pitch better. I think last weekend was a step in the right direction. I mean, you really didn't get a terrible start from your rotation, maybe outside of Becker, who gave up a few runs, but you get a good start from Eli Jones. You get a phenomenal start from Jack Mahoney. You just need the guys that can pitch well to continue to do so. In spite of all these injuries, it's going to be a real testament to see what this team can do and what they're made of in a series like this, backs up against the wall type of mentality. So, yeah, I'm just really interested to see what what they're going to do this weekend. But again, it just comes down to the fundamentals, hitting the ball well and not taking crappy at bats. That's kind of just the thing that really killed them this weekend. Getting back to South Carolina baseball, the brand of baseball that we're used to, not just the home runs and stuff, but the 2-out hits, the clutchness of this team that we have seen 3/4 of the year. They got to get back to it, man, at some point. Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to be they might be an early round exit this year if they don't figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think you do need the South Carolina brand of baseball. We're going to go out there and beat you, and you're not going to do anything about it. I think being at Founders Park will definitely help. I know the fans will be, do their best in heckling and whatnot, and just kind of get that swagger back. That's all they need, and I feel like a little home cooking is what you need too. But it's a combination of all that. I think being on the road in the middle of that skid doesn't help at all. Again, looking like world beaters after Florida, you got to come home. And I mean, the ball's in your court right now. It's right there. It's open for the taking. Do you want to host a regional or not? And so you get to come at home. You get a little taste of it against a big time team like Tennessee. So it's a very, very big series. I think, again, you got to hit the ball. Bullpen needs to be good, if not great. Because how the starters have been for South Carolina baseball this year, the bullpen needs to be so good. It needs to be pretty clean. Can't be allowing 3-4 runs after the starter comes out. It's not possible against a team like Tennessee. So, and another thing, bullpen and starters really got to limit the home runs. I mean, this team will take them if you give them to them. So, limit the home runs for me. And then again, you got to hit some too. You got to have more than 1 or 2 home runs in this series. If you're South Carolina, you got to win this series. I'd like to see 3 or 4, but Ethan Petrie, it starts with him. It starts with Gamecocks. It starts with Moose. It starts with all those guys who have pop. You got to get on base, and then you got to let your guys behind you bring you home. So pop, bullpen's got to tighten up, but those are some of the things I'd like to see if they want to get things back on track. We talked about the rotation already. Jack, what do they have to do this weekend? And we'll kind of segue this into predictions too. What does this team have to do to get a full head of steam going into Hoover in the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I think it just starts with winning the series. I think you really, really, really need to win the series. Any way you can, just fight, scrap, and claw to get 2 wins at least. I just think if you go into next week with 1 win against Tennessee, your chances of hosting a regional are kind of dropping even more. You're kind of putting it up to the fate of the people who decide this whole thing with the rankings and stuff. And that's never really South Carolina has the ball in their court right now, like you said, Joe, to make something happen and solidify themselves as a top 16 seed in this upcoming tournament. But if they lose the series, it's out of their hands at this point, and they need a pretty strong weekend in Hoover to kind of get back into that discussion, I would think, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, and in the past, their struggles in Hoover have been kind of prevalent. They really haven't played well there in pretty much close to a decade. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there, but getting a few wins here is definitely a good start. And kind of seeing who your guys are going to be. You need a lot of depth heading into that tournament. So the more guys that can pitch well, the guys that can come off the bench and hit really well for you, gives you more options as you get down to the thick of it when you're playing every single day in that SEC tournament next week.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And as unforgiving as Hoover has been, I think this would be the one team to kind of break the ship in terms of what all lies within the lore of South Carolina baseball and Hoover and all of the superstitions and them not playing well in Hoover. I think this would be the one team to kind of turn the tides in the right direction for Hoover. I think, you do have to take the series against Tennessee, but to have any kind of momentum going to Hoover. I don't think you can have any, maybe a little bit if you kill Tennessee in your one win, if you lose the series, but I don't know, man. You gotta take the series. But getting into the predictions, Jack, you want to lead her off, and then I'll close this thing on down.
Yeah. I picked South Carolina, went 2 out of 3 last week. They didn't go well. I think this weekend Tennessee's not a good road team this year. 2-11, like I said earlier. Both teams have got a lot to play for, but I think in the end you're going to get, now that South Carolina's fully healthy pretty much with that lineup, even though the pitching is not fully there, but I think you're going to get 2 wins from this team. Everything is at stake here, whether you want to admit it or not. I just think if South Carolina loses this series this weekend, I don't want to say they're done because it's never over until it's actually over, but it's just like the feeling in your stomach is just not good heading into postseason play when you played pretty crappy the last 4 weeks of the season. So I do think they'll get 2 wins here. I'm not sure when, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say game 1 and 3. And I think you're going to get a good outing from Jack Mahoney. If he doesn't start, that's crazy, but I think he'll start on Friday. You'll get a great outing from him, and the rest of the staff I think will carry, as well as the hitting. Everyone's back now. I think it's just there's no more excuses, no more reasons to lose. This is your chance to get back on the map and gain the confidence of your entire fan base. So, yeah, give me South Carolina win 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I like that take. I think South Carolina's going to take 2 out of 3. A little bit home cooking. I liked your point. There are no more excuses for this lineup. Everybody's back. You have to play big boy baseball, and you got a big boy baseball team coming to you. This is the chance to show everybody why a home game belongs in Columbia, South Carolina, for a regional. How bad do you want it? It's all it comes down to. It's put up or shut up time. And they started off as well as they did, and still found a way to be in this scenario. I mean, that's the SEC's hard. We get it, but now you still have a chance to hold on to, what you've worked for the entire season. So again, put up or shut up. No more excuses. And then Hoover, we all know how that goes. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what all goes down at Founders Park this weekend. But that is everything from us tonight here on Foul Balls. As always, I'm Intern Joe. It's Jack Veltri. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next week to preview the SEC tournament, probably with Colin, I would assume.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever it takes to get him back on.
Absolutely. And we're not quite sure. I'm assuming we'll go on Monday, but please stay tuned to our Twitters and the message boards and stuff, and we'll keep you guys posted. And join Mike, Yuva, and I for talking Tuesday nights as always. Did that last night. It was all good. Whatnot. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.